What's going on, guys? Tower number 9 here, and today we have a new feature for the channel that I'm going to be doing here. It's called Fun Deck Fridays, and on Friday I'm going to upload a deck that I think is cool and fun. It might not necessarily be the most competitive thing in the game, but it's something that I think is cool, and we're going to start off here with Blue Sabine. So can Sabine do well with blue cards? So Sabine's a proven winner, one of the most successful leaders in the game. However, most of the decks that we've seen with her have been green, yellow, or double red. Blue Sabine hasn't seen quite as much exploration as a whole. I think Chrono was playing around with it in the previous set, but after I released my recent video on updating Sabine builds for Shadows of the Galaxy, I saw some viewers asking for a blue Sabine variant, so I cooked this up. I think the upgrades and the Mandalorian synergy can go a long way in the right situation. It definitely does have some vulnerabilities. I'm not saying this is the best Sabine deck, but it's fun and it's a different take on the leader, so I figured I would show you guys as the inaugural Fun Decks Friday build here. Let's take a look. So yeah, blue Sabine testing here. This is the build. So we have the security complex as the base. I think this is one of the few blue decks where security complex is actually really good. Sabine is normally going to be the aggro. As an epic action, you can give a shield token to a non-leader unit that lets you protect one of your units and try to get some more damage in or win an early combat interaction. And the loss of 5 HP doesn't matter as much when you're normally the aggressor. This deck is focused on Mandalorian synergy, so there aren't as many of the non-Mandalorian cards that are more staples in classic Sabine decks. We're not playing Rebel synergy. I do have the Green Squadron A-Wing, Red 3, Cassian Andor, and K2SO, because those cards are, in my opinion, just really strong cards. And so they are not Mandalorians, but the rest of the force here is Mandalorian. We got Unit Sabine, we have Follower of the Way, Ketsu Onyo, Housecast Soldier, Disabling Fangfighter, Mandalorian Warrior, Razor Crest, Casca Reeves, and the Armorer. So we have a fair number of Mandalorians there for the synergy with the Darksaber, the Armorer, and the Mandalorian Warrior. In the sideboard, we have 2 copies of Devotion. We have 3 copies of Wolf, who I think is quite important in the current set with the strong healing that we've seen from some of these new decks, especially Rey. We have 2 copies of Open Fire, and we have 3 Concord Dawn Interceptors. Now, Concord Dawn Interceptors is a Mandalorian, and the thing about it, though, is that it's just not an aggressive card. It only hits for 1. It's much better at defending against early fighters than it is at pushing the attack, so we kind of have that as a sideboard card to shore up space against some of the more aggressive opponents. Now, in terms of upgrades, we have 3 Jedi Lightsabers and 3 Darksabers. So the Darksaber is very strong in this deck. This is one of the few situations where the Darksaber is actually perhaps going to be giving out experience, which is really good if you get it going. The Jedi Lightsaber, you might notice that we don't have any Force units in the build, but the Jedi Lightsaber can still be really strong. You just throw it onto Sabine in the right situation and just try to push more damage. And so we're basically just playing it for stats, but sometimes that's what you want. We do also have 2 copies of Covert Strength, which can give experience tokens and heal, and we have 3 copies of the Mandalorian Warrior, who can also give experience. So there are some options there for upgrades. The Security Complex's shield is also an upgrade, and the Armorer can give out shields as well. So those can be helpful for setting up Follower of the Way or Casca Reeves. Let's take a look at some of these specific cards. I have 2 that I want to highlight here. Follower of the Way. So this is a weird card. I'm not saying this card is the best card ever. It's actually below the curve unupgraded, so 2 for a 1/3. Once you upgrade it, it becomes essentially 2 for a 2/4, which is above the curve. Now, I personally think this card should actually have an additional point of stats because it does suffer from comparison to things like Battlefield Marine. So Battlefield Marine has 6 points of stats, no downside, not conditional. This card has a conditional 6 points of stats. Now, to be fair, it only has 1 aspect instead of 2, so, maybe the power level is a little weaker, but I think for something like this to be a real star, I think ideally it would have had 7 points of stats once upgraded. But that's not what they chose to do, and that's okay. It's still a good card in the right situation. It's vulnerable to upgrade removal and capture or bounce, but in the scenario where, let's say you play this turn 1, turn 2 you play Mandalorian Warrior and buff it, now your Follower of the Way is actually a 3/5, which is pretty sweet. You can also throw, let's say turn 1 you play Follower of the Way, turn 2 you throw that Jedi Lightsaber on there, and now the Follower of the Way just essentially got +4/+4, so you're looking at a 5/7, which is pretty scary. Security Complex can help as well. Throw that shield on there, and it does become a 2/4. All in all, this isn't an awful card, and I think it works in this deck, but it's also not amazing. Even in a deck that can enable it fairly reliably, the base power level of this just isn't all that great, but it works with Mandalorian synergies. It can be good in the right situation. Usually, this is like something you might want to play early, and it becomes less of a strong point in the late game, unless, I don't know, if you have the Darksaber and you're swinging to get experience on this, yeah, sure, play it out. But I will also say if you have the Darksaber and are swinging, you're probably in a pretty good spot. Anyway, the Armorer Survival is Strength is a card that ended up being much stronger than I expected. So I was not super positive on this card when it was first previewed, but when playing it in a deck with a bunch of Mandalorian units, I've become increasingly positive on it. Giving potentially 3 shields with 1 card is just really sweet. And her ability works on herself. It also works on Sabine. You can really solidify the board if your opponent's kind of starting to push back. They're getting stuff out. They're starting to counter your units. Playing the armor and giving out a bunch of shields can kind of lock in the game. I think that she is expensive, but I found her to be very strong. And as I was testing this deck, I actually went from playing just 2 copies to playing 3 because it's a good enough effect that I want to have it more reliably. And do note that some of your space units are Mandalorians too. So disabling Fangfighter, that is a Mandalorian card. Conquered Dawn Interceptors, if you're bringing it in from the sideboard, that's a Mandalorian card. Razor Crest, that's a Mandalorian card. Her personal stats are bad, and she's weak if the board is small. Sometimes it can still be worth playing her just to have a shielded thing, maybe you just need a few more hits and your opponent is mostly tapped out, and just playing a shielded unit is something they might not immediately be able to deal with. So sometimes it can be worth it to play her on her own, but usually you're only really wanting to play this if you're getting benefit from shielding other units as well. But I did find her to be better than I was expecting in the test. Overall, I think this build is a lot better than it might seem. The upgrades and stuff are actually pretty strong in my testing. The Mandalorian synergies can be pretty good, but unfortunately, I think this build is weak to yellow. So Bounce is bad against a strategy that has a bunch of upgrades. Exhaust on your leader is really bad if you're going for the Jedi Lightsaber or Darksaber. Getting hit by No Good to Me Dead is really not what you want to see. It feels to me like yellow has a fair number of counters, and since one of the decks that I think is a very important matchup right now is Boba double yellow, that's kind of a scenario where I'm personally probably wouldn't take this to a tournament unless I thought those decks were definitely not present, and even then, I think one of the other Sabine variants might be better, but I had fun playing with this. I think it's an interesting variation of Sabine, and if you wanna try it out, maybe you can find a better version than what I had. One thing that I will say is that against other aggro decks, this deck can very easily play kind of a mid-rangey thing. You use your shields and upgrades to get advantage, take out their units, and set up a good scenario, especially post-sideboard with the Devotions, the CDI, the Open Fire. So I was pleasantly surprised by this. I thought it was a lot of fun. I do think it's a bit weak to some of the tricks that Yellow has access to. Not sure I would run this in a tournament, but it was a lot of fun, and I'm curious to hear what you guys think about it. So yeah, that is my take on a blue Sabine build. I know some of you had been asking for this in the comments, and I delivered. So, stay tuned for more. I'm going to try to put out a video like this every week. Also note that the YouTube Shorts have started up again because Fantasy Flight Games has done some previews now for the Twilight of the Republic set. And so the YouTube Shorts are starting up. We aren't really in the full spoiler season, so I'm going to space them out a bit more. I think it might be quite some time before we get a bunch of new spoilers, but I am still going to be bringing out those shorts, commenting on that stuff. And I have a new article up at the 5th Trooper blog. It should be going up about the same time as this video, actually, and that is linked in the video description below, kind of just going over the new mechanics and what we've seen from the set so far. So if you're interested in set 3, check that out. One other tidbit, I just want to call this now. The 4th set of this game is called Jump to Lightspeed. They revealed the names of the future sets. My prediction is that Jump to Lightspeed will be the first set to have space leaders. and I think we are going to see Space Leaders in that set. That's my prediction. You can feel free to clip this and make fun of me if Jump to Lightspeed doesn't have Space Leaders, but I just want to get that out there because I think that I am in fact going to be vindicated in my prediction and want to put it on the record. Okay, that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thanks for joining me for this inaugural Fun Deck Friday, and we're going to have more content coming soon, including both more competitive oriented and more casual types of stuff. So stay tuned for more, and if there's a specific type of content that you would like to see more of, feel free to comment below or message me or whatever and let me know your thoughts. Thanks again for watching, and we'll be back later with some more Star Wars Unlimited content. I will catch you guys later.